Welcome back to Bonded Voices. Today we're going to talk about economics, corruption, and endless foreign wars. And as we started to discuss this, the idea was, how are these three topics tied together? And could they actually be separated from each other? So as you sit on your couch and watch the evening news, if anybody still does that, do you think, you know what, as long as we get beyond this event, as long as this economic cycle changes, then everything's going to be good again? Because that's what we're hearing from everybody talking about. Let's just get beyond this. Don't pay attention to the man behind the curtain. So, I'm Greg.
I'm Ian.
And this is Lauren.
So, the concept here is, as we talked before, right before, World War II was supposed to be the last world war, and it wasn't. We are constantly involved with military conflicts, whether or not we coin it as a war. How is that fueled? Is the economic information that we're gaining really legitimate? Every report that comes out financial gets revised. So it moves the market immediately, and somebody benefits from that immediate movement.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so if somebody knows that that event is going to happen and move the market, how do you not believe that there's corruption?
Well, I think when you look at this, it's today, right? We're 2023. The economics, corruption, endless foreign wars, that's the news on a daily basis, in one way or another. And I know a lot of people who look at this and say it's all manipulated. It is massively manipulated from all three of those things. Like, they believe in the industrial military complex. They believe in the Wall Street's a big sham, and it's a game where stock market goes up, they all buy in. People like the day traders and the everyday mom and pop put more money into the stock market. Oh, boom. Within a week, that stock's all been taken down. And mom and pop lost the money, but the traders made money out of it. And then corruption, look at from everything from Trump's 4 impeachments to all of the Biden crime family stuff, and every politician who earns $180,000 a year and ends up with $10 million after 5 years. I want that math problem.
Well, isn't it fascinating that the newer politicians that are trying to get their name out there, they talk about term limits, but yet if they make it to the national level,
right, they don't want
it's
they're
immediately forgotten. Yeah.
Let's talk about insider trading. Oh, we're absolutely against insider trading until it benefits my family.
Exactly.
And then it's A-OK.
Yeah.
I think Mark Twain said it best. It could probably be shown by facts and figures that there's no distinctly Native American criminal class except for Congress. And that's perfectly fits today as it did 100 years ago.
Yeah, and I think what it erodes is trust, right? So without making this a left or right political issue, because I think within all those three things, economics, corruption, and foreign wars, left or right has been on the opposite side of it every other time.
So you're saying they flip-flop back and forth.
Like
I
one
agree.
minute they're supporting it, the next minute they're against it.
I agree.
You know?
Well, I don't know. Both parties are pretty much for war now. I mean, if you think about it, like in 2023, we have the potential to have war on at least three fronts right now. We have what's going on in the Middle East. We have Eastern Europe, and then we have East Asia.
But what I'm saying is, though, if you look at today, the Ukraine war, the majority of Democrats in favor of it, with Russia, and the majority of conservatives aren't. And the war in Gaza with the Israelis, the majority of conservatives are for it, and the majority of Democrats are on the fence about it.
Well, is it just that they're splitting it? Did they come to a
Yeah, but that's what I mean. Whether it's Iraq, Korea, Vietnam, it seems to flip-flop.
Or the in collusion going, okay, you guys say you're not for it today, and we're going to take the hit. and then next time you say it's your war.
But yeah, well, it could be, yeah. And there's that headspace out there, right? That, but then that ties into economics as well, because you have again that military-industrial complex, which it was Eisenhower's farewell speech where he actually named it. So it's not like it's a tinfoil hat conspiracy thing. It's everyone knows it's out there. Who's it benefiting and who's on the side that's going to be benefiting of it when someone's son or daughter can end up in a box?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it's also impacted by the election cycle, because it's going to be the argument every 4 years of, we're bringing these troops home.
Yeah.
And it's going to flip-flop back and forth between the Republicans and the Democrats, depending upon who was in power. And the opposing party's going to say, we're bringing those troops home. We care more about the American troops.
Well, I actually heard even shadier than that is that they said wartime presidents do really well in election years.
Oh, it's always so. When I was in the military, whenever it was an election year, we always knew we're going to get deployed somewhere. It was always
right. Yeah.
I remember it was Bush when I was in the original Bush, and I remember hearing they're like, "Oh, the only reason this is happening is because he wants to be reelected." And it's the conspiracy theory of, oh, you can't switch presidents during
wartime.
During wartime, so they always think, okay, we'll start a war.
Yeah,
that's whatever. Like I bet if you polled the military, that's usually a common thread.
Well, and I don't think most people would know, and it'd be interesting from our listeners. And go to bondedvoices.com and add in anything that we forgot here. But we've got troops in the Congo. We've got, fighting in the Congo. I didn't even realize until the other day, we have actual military bases in Syria. Like, that was built kind of quietly, and...
The war on terror, we put on bases everywhere.
Yeah, but it's like, but we're fighting in those places. We're being shot at and we're shooting back. And then throughout the places we're in throughout Africa, there was something like... I think it was Benin or somewhere like that, where they said, "Oh, our troops were being pulled out because something about the rules of engagement." I'm like, "Who the hell are we fighting in Benin?" So and when you talk about endless foreign wars, it's like everywhere.
Yeah, I think it's the U.S. has become the police of the world,
and I think that's a big part of it. Right.
And it's very easy for the politicians go, well, we've got to do this. We've got to help these people.
Someone has to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And since World War II, the U.S. has assumed that role.
Yeah.
And because of that, economically, we've, benefited from being the police of the world.
I think the president said something the other day, which was, we're just giving Ukraine our old weapons so we can build new ones, and we'll have the newer, better versions of them. It's like, really? What? Newer, better bullets? Like, I know, missiles and planes, but still, it's like, that's the reason.
Made with borrowed money. What's the math behind that?
Well, there's the economics part, right? Yeah, it just drives up the national debt and increases spending, and who's actually benefiting from that?
You got to train with those new weapons. You got to train our allies on those weapons. So that's lots of dollars spent there.
Yeah. Yeah. And you got to think, for the psyche of the country, are those three things at a place where people lose faith in America?
Yep.
Well, we have a generation that is anti-America because of the constant interfering in other countries. And
well, that's interesting. What came first? Is it the chicken or the egg situation here?
Whether they hated us?
No, was it the endless foreign wars that created the hate, or was it the hate that created the endless foreign wars, as in, like you said, there's a whole generation?
Well, so it started back in the 60s with that generation that started protesting the Vietnam War, but there hasn't been it's not as publicized as much, but there's always been people that have been anti-war.
Always, yeah.
I mean, Look, Lindbergh was anti going to World War II.
Yeah. Yeah, so you've always had it. So, if you're someone struggling with not making the money I'm wanting to, I'm just seeing everyone else making money, so there's the corruption piece of it that's playing in there. How do you stay sane when you also have in the background or leading the news story more bombs dropped, more people killed, more body bags coming home, and have faith in humanity to just live a full life?
It begs the question of, is ignorance bliss? Do I just tune out from all of that? Or I need to become more active and pay more attention to who I vote for? But I'm not sure if that's the solution, because if we go back to the officials that get elected on the, you know what, I'm all about, we're going to get rid of the dark money. We're going to put in term limits. We're going to stop insider trading. We're going to do all of these things, and that's what's going to clean up Washington, D.C. And then those same humans that got elected to that are turncoats.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Because they're now in the inner sanctum, right?
Right. And now they're talking about generational wealth, multi-generational wealth. Now they've got, their child is carrying a name that carries some value far beyond the regular Joes out on the street.
But Greg, you said something brilliant there, which is the ignorance is bliss part. But because maybe that's why the amount of time people spend on their screens, including TV, phones, all that sort of stuff, is through the roof. So if you're all staring at that, video games, porn, whatever it is, right, you're not listening to the real world out there. And the real world don't stop when you decide to turn it off.
Right, but with the 24-hour news cycle, we're inundated with the news, and they're making up news to make us.
Oh, absolutely.
We have, in my family, we unplugged. We do not have. We watch TV. It's the internet TV service providers out there, but we don't have cable TV, so we don't watch the mainstream news. We don't get any of that. I've quit watching the news completely, and I have to tell you, my blood pressure's gone down. I don't really care so much about certain things. I'm probably not the best thing to do, but I don't have to worry about. I don't spend a lot of time worrying about some of this stuff.
Well, if you go back 50 years or 100 years, people went extended periods of time without news, and they heard news from conversation with their neighbors.
Read a newspaper.
Right.
Yeah,
and their lives were complete.
But I think back in the day as well, Greg, and I grew up with the news in England was on at 6 o'clock, and it was like either half an hour of news, and that was it. They had to have quality programming for that hour and pertinent, accurate, important things. Right. The moment you get to that 24-hour news cycle, now they have to just waffle.
Right.
And they have to cover things that just aren't important. Some cat got thrown out of a tree.
Right.
Like, what? It's on the news.
Well, no, but then they need the input from one political party or the other about that in order to create a...
And has all that extra news cycles generated more hate and discontent between the parties and friends and neighbors because, you're this party and I'm this party.
Well, but because I think, and that's why I think the news channels have become very partisan, is because you need to be sticky and just reporting the same news that another channel's reporting, that doesn't make you sticky. You have to have a twist on it, a political bent on it that inures you to a certain audience. Like, is there really any partisan news show out there right now?
Is it possible to not be aligned?
No, I don't think financially it is. Again, that comes into the economics and corruption piece, right?
Right.
Like these,
you got to drive revenue. We need to increase advertising. We need to money, go.
Right. I mean, Greg, you said before we started this that all of these three things are very political, but they're three legs of a stool, right? Mm-hmm. They're all super tied into each other. Like, because a great example, we send $40 billion to Ukraine, endless foreign war, economics. The corruption piece is they can't find 20 billion of it. It just disappeared.
Right.
And no one's willing to follow up. And then they're sending you a tax bill where they're like, what happened to this extra $420? You're like, wait a second, 20 billion over here?
Right.
Are you worried about my 500? So that's what I mean. It's like, I think that these sort of things, and whether the government and call them the elites in the country, know what they're doing, I think it's slowly but surely crushing people who are paying attention and turning off everyone else so they don't pay attention.
It's psychological warfare.
I think it is.
Is it new, though? I mean, is this something that our parents didn't deal with? And are we just now coming to the age of,
They didn't have it delivered via fire hose to every single avenue in their lives.
Yeah, but look at World War II. They had propaganda through the roof.
No, they did, but I think that and propaganda was a war tool. But I think that when you look at, and maybe this is naive, the corruption side of government can't have been as bad then as it is now. To me, it's a simple math equation. You do 5 years in Congress at 180 grand a year, and you go from broke to $10 million in the bank, and nobody asks any questions.
Well, I think
it's that new math.
Yeah.
It's Common Core.
Maybe that's quite it is. Yeah.
But the thing is I think the government's always been corrupt.
Oh, 100%.
I mean, I can pull out quotes from Roman times where they talk about the corrupt government. The Mark Twain quote, corrupt government. James Madison, corrupt government.
Well, who did the power corrupts and ultimate power corrupts ultimately, the saying? And how long goes that? And
I mean, so anytime you get into the government, there's always going to be corruption. So, I mean, I don't think it's anything new. I think maybe we're paying attention to it more because of the fire hose, but
are we paying attention to it more? Because a friend of mine was talking about all these hearings Congress have got going on in both the House and the Senate. Nothing's going to happen. It's just a bunch of blah, 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 and nothing ever happens. And it's true.
So does Congress manage to mediocrity?
Yes,
or do they even get to mediocrity?
No, I think they're. But are they even tied up so much with procedure and everything else?
Analysis paralysis is what it is.
Right, that they get to a point where they just are paralyzed to do anything, or is it that they never eat their own? Like, when was the last person in Congress to get run out? Was it that guy from Minnesota, Al Franken? Was he the last one who honorably left because, that sexual harassment thing, sexual harassment thing against him? But other than that, people are like, they give me a yacht. What's the big deal?
And the arrogance of the atrocities, and someone is torn apart in the media, and they go away for 6 months or a year, and they're back. And the American people, there are newscasters for major stations that get chased off because of all the things they've done. And lo and behold, hey, that's a familiar face on a B-level programming that, you know what? 12 months, that person's going to be right back in the mainstream. And we as Americans, that's weird. I don't remember that story because it's more than 20 minutes old.
Right. So we're in a situation where these things, I think we'd all agree that they're perpetual. They've probably been since the beginning of time. Similar things have happened. Money corruption, wars, the Roman Empire, probably same problems, right? But how do how do you conceptualize it in your day-to-day life without one thinking you're a part of it, or because we're Americans, right? So if we're talking of it from an American point of view, we're culpable.
But how culpable are you if you elect people in your congressional district, but you go to a place like California and you don't have any problem electing people that are, like on their deathbed, and their votes are being rubber stamped in by the lobbyists.
At the end of the day, this subject matter comes to mind with the idea being that I know a lot of people struggle with it, and they turn off, they disconnect, they don't vote, and if that happens, where do we end up as a country? And I mean on every level, from school vote stuff, they're all like, it's a whole bunch of bullshit. It's all corrupt. It's all shell game. They're all in it together.
Well, and that's part of George Soros's book on how to conquer, is to go after the smaller campaigns, the smaller elections, dump more money, because he gets much more traction putting money into...
And you can influence quicker with those.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You can turn the ship much faster rather than going after the biggest election on the ticket. You start moving the smaller ones.
So what advice would we have as takeaways for people who are struggling with watching the government, watching the country at war around the world, and just, cause I think from a libertarian point of view, they'd be like, if everyone was a libertarian, we'd be good.
Well, I think my point of reference or my recommendation would be, we actually did a podcast on this earlier about unplugging. And I think it's important to do a reset. It's important to shut your laptop down and restart it periodically. It puts all the little files, instead of being randomly strewn about, that puts them in nice little packages and gives an opportunity for your brain to comprehend, come back refreshed.
I'm going to challenge you with this, though, because we also did, why does everything have to be political? Right? And we concluded because it is. Mm-hmm. And very interestingly, on the subject of disconnecting, Hamas attacked Israel on a festival where they knew people would be unplugged. They knew the communication would be down. They actually even planned, but they were scared that they were going to be uncovered. They were going to do it on Passover, when everyone would have been completely unplugged. And the death toll there could have been 5-10x what it was. But even on Sukkot, celebration, they knew they would be unplugged. Sabbath morning.
Well, so you know what, Ian?
Can't disconnect. So here's the thing: if you want an action item for people? Be political at your local level. Get involved. Write your congressman. Hold your elected officials responsible for their actions.
Attend a school board meeting.
We don't want to go too far. Those get kind of boring.
Yeah.
Because I've been to a few.
So you have attended school board meetings?
Yes.
So that validates your, hey, get involved.
Yeah, I guess.
Be an active participant, or at least listening.
Yeah. But I think that's the takeaway from this. I'm listening to you guys talk, and I'm pondering the different outcomes, and I think too many people are passive in this, and they're like, it's someone else's problem. I don't hold my congressman accountable for whatever the Al Franken, having an affair, which probably is 99% of congressmen, or congresspeople.
Humanity. Yeah.
But if they lie, hold them accountable. If they say they're going to do something, hold them accountable. There's nothing wrong. You can write your congressman, call them, set a petition up, and petition your congressman.
See, I would go with a combination of what Greg said, that you have to be sane, so you have to unplug at some point. But also, on the flip side of that, get involved. Mm-hmm. Be active, but don't let it consume you.
Right.
There's a difference between being involved in consuming news.
Yeah.
So you have to be educated on the subject, but you not be a consumer of news.
Yeah, I think that's a good takeaway to end this one.
Yeah, we've got consensus. So I hope that you enjoyed the conversation about economics, corruption, and endless foreign wars, and at least our take on it. As Ian mentioned before, go to bondedvoices.com. We'd love to hear your opinion on this. Bring up some points that maybe we didn't cover on this podcast. Thanks for joining us. I'm Greg.
I'm Ian.
This is Lauren.
Take care.